The vast emptiness of space had never felt so oppressive to General Gadath as it did now. Standing on the command platform of the Atan mothership Imperious Vanguard, he absorbed the neural displays projecting directly into his consciousness. The holographic data stream showed the same grim statistics that had haunted him for the past 3 cycles. The Kreth advance had consumed another 17 systems, and Atan forces were stretched beyond sustainable limits. "The High Council awaits, General," his second-in-command Grad announced, mandibles clicking in the distinct pattern that denoted urgent military matters. "They've been reviewing your preliminary assessment of the third planet." Gadath's exoskeleton shifted hues from deep bronze to a steely blue, a physiological response to stress that no amount of military discipline could fully suppress. 6,000 years of war against the Kreth had hardened the Atan into the galaxy's most formidable warriors, but for the first time in their recorded history, the Atan Imperium faced the real possibility of extinction. "Prepare the quantum chamber," Gadath ordered, his 4 upper limbs adjusting the ceremonial insignia that marked his rank. The metallic components clinked against his hardened carapace as he moved toward the ship's communication nexus. The holographic council chamber materialized around him as he stepped onto the transmission platform. 7 elders, their exoskeletons bleached almost white with extreme age, regarded him with compound eyes that betrayed no emotion. The chamber itself simulated the Grand Hall of Ancestors on the Atan homeworld, a psychological reminder of what they fought to preserve. "General Gadath," the first elder intoned, voice resonating with the subharmonics that carried authority among their kind, "the Imperium faces unprecedented peril. The Kreth adaptation rate has exceeded our projections. Their biological assimilation capabilities now outpace our technological countermeasures." Gadath stood rigidly at attention, his secondary limbs locked in the position of ultimate deference. "The statistics support your assessment, revered elder. We've lost 42% of our warrior population in the last offensive. Our breeding pools cannot replenish numbers at the required rate, even with accelerated maturation protocols." "Which brings us to why you've been summoned," the third elder said, her voice carrying the distinctive tonal markers of the scientific cat. A 3-dimensional representation of Earth appeared between them, rotating slowly as it focused on the northeastern region of Africa. "Deep space reconnaissance has identified a promising species, primitive, but with remarkable genetic potential. Humans," Gadath observed. He had studied the reconnaissance data extensively during the approach to this solar system. "Physically frail compared to Atan warriors, technologically primitive, but their neural architecture contains interesting anomalies." "More than interesting," the second elder corrected, manipulating the hologram to display a cross-section of human DNA alongside Atan and Kreth genetic structures. "Their genetic structure is extraordinarily adaptable. Our simulation suggests they could be modified to withstand Kreth parasitic infestation with minimal alterations. Additionally, their reproductive rate is exceptional. A full gestation cycle requires only 9 local orbital periods." The fourth elder, who had remained silent until now, gestured with his upper limbs. "Our engineers have designed structures that will serve our purposes while appearing monumental and religious to the primitive observers. They will be perceived as tributes to their gods, which effectively is what we will become to them." The plans unfurled in Gadath's mind. Massive stone structures, precisely aligned with stellar configurations, containing internal chambers shielded from detection. The pyramid design was elegantly simple, yet would house technology tens of thousands of years beyond human comprehension. "The structures themselves will constitute the first phase of testing," Gadath realized aloud. "Precision, coordination, strength, problem-solving, all observable during construction." "Your insight serves you well, General," the first elder acknowledged. "These humans must be assessed before full-scale harvesting begins. We must understand their capabilities, their limitations. The construction project will reveal their capacity for following complex instructions, their physical endurance, and their response to authority. "And when the assessment is complete?" Gaddath inquired, already anticipating the answer. The seven elders' exoskeletons simultaneously shifted to the deep crimson that signified absolute resolve. The first elder's voice took on the ceremonial cadence used only for matters of imperial survival. "You will select and extract 3 million specimens for immediate genetic modification and combat conditioning. The Kreth advance must be contained, General Gaddath. If these humans prove suitable, they will form the vanguard of our counter-offensive." Gaddath's inner eyelids flicked in acknowledgement of the order. "By your command, it shall be done. The Third Fleet stands ready to deploy to Earth orbit. We will establish bases at the designated coordinates and begin human assessment immediately." As the quantum communication terminated, Gaddath returned to the bridge of the Imperious Vanguard. Beyond the viewing portal, the blue-green world turned slowly against the blackness of space, its inhabitants completely unaware that their destiny had just been decided in a conversation millions of light-years away. "Set course for Earth," Gaddath commanded. "The future of the Atan Imperium begins today." 3 local solar cycles after the Atan arrival, General Gaddath stood beneath the scorching Egyptian sun, his exoskeleton disguised by adaptive camouflage technology that made him appear as a towering figure in ornate golden armor to human eyes. Earth's atmospheric composition, rich in nitrogen and oxygen, felt caustic against his respiratory membranes, but the discomfort was irrelevant to the mission. Before him stretched a vast construction site along the west bank of the Nile River. Thousands of humans labored under the watchful eyes of Atan overseers, themselves disguised as priests and nobles of the local culture. Massive limestone blocks quarried from sites hundreds of kilometers away moved with surprising efficiency toward their designated positions in what would become the largest precision-engineered structure on the planet. "Fascinating to observe them in their natural environment," noted Chief Scientist Makrath, who approached with measured steps across the sand. Unlike Gaddath, who projected a humanoid appearance, Makrath's presence was concealed by more complex technology. To human perception, he was merely a high priest of Anubis, an invented deity that served their cover operation effectively. "Their adaptation to the tools exceeds projections," Gaddath observed, watching as a team of workers manipulated a copper alloy measuring device. The Atan had provided seemingly primitive tools, secretly augmented with advanced metallurgical enhancements, technology that wouldn't be rediscovered on Earth for millennia. "Report on construction progress." Makaras's disguised form produced a quantum data interface. The foundation grid was established with a deviation of less than 0.2 centimeters across 230 meters. Remarkable precision for biological entities lacking advanced computational assistance. Gaddath watched as workers meticulously checked the levelness of the massive foundation platform using water-filled channels. A simple, yet effective technique suggested by one of the human overseers that the Atan had adopted. They innovate within parameters. Useful. Indeed, the base of the pyramid is perfectly square, with corners accurate to within 0.09 degrees of true perpendicular. We provided no explicit instruction on how to achieve this, merely the requirement. They developed methodologies using stellar observation and shadow casting that approximate advanced trigonometric principles. This was precisely what made humans valuable subjects. Their capacity to solve complex problems with minimal resources demonstrated adaptability that Kreth would find challenging to counter. "Show me the quarry operation," Gaddath commanded. They moved to a viewing platform overlooking the distant limestone quarry. Through enhanced vision, Gaddath could observe the extraction process in detail, despite the distance. "They've developed a remarkably efficient system," Makrath explained. "Wooden wedge inserted into pre-cut channels, then soaked with water. The expansion splits the stone along predetermined lines with minimal waste. Again, a technique they developed independently, after we specified the required block dimensions. Casualties at the quarry sites? Acceptable range. 7% fatality rate, primarily from falling debris and exhaustion. We've identified the stronger specimens and reassigned them to more demanding tasks as part of ongoing assessment. Gaddath nodded with approval. The Atan approach was efficient, not cruel, a distinction lost on species who hadn't faced extinction for 6 millennia. And transportation methods? Most illuminating aspect of the operation, McGrath said, genuine appreciation in his voice. Initially, they attempted to drag the stones on wooden sledges. Highly inefficient. After we introduced the concept of lubricated surfaces through one of our human intermediaries, they developed a system using wet clay that reduces friction by approximately 60%. A massive limestone block weighing nearly 70 tons moved steadily across the desert, pulled by hundreds of humans working in precise coordination. Rather than struggling against dry sand, the sledge glided across a prepared clay surface, wetted to create a slick interface between sledge and ground. Locomotive efficiency increased by what factor? Gaddath inquired. Teams of 172 humans can now move a 2.5-ton block at an average speed of 0.75 kilometers per hour. This exceeds our original calculations by 23%. Gaddath's inner eyelids flicked with satisfaction. The council will be pleased with the assessment metrics. They proceeded toward the primary construction site, where the first 15 courses of stone had been laid with methodical precision. The massive structure was taking shape exactly according to Atan's specifications, though the humans believed they built a tomb for their god king. Explain the alignment process, Gaddath commanded, as they approached a team of humans who appeared to be conducting astronomical observations despite the daylight hours. Makrath gestured toward the group. These are their knowledge keepers, priests of their sun deity. We've enhanced their understanding through subtle intervention, introducing concepts of celestial mechanics without revealing their true purpose. A human wearing the headdress of high office was directing others to mark positions on the stone using a copper-infused rod that glinted in the sunlight. They've achieved precise cardinal alignment, McGrath continued. The north face of the structure deviates from true astronomical north by only 0.05 degrees. They accomplish this by tracking the movements of their polar star and making corrections based on seasonal variations. Without understanding the principles of planetary axial tilt, Gaddath noted with genuine impression. Remarkable intuitive astronomy. More remarkable still, they've incorporated the precise measurements we required without understanding their significance. The height-to-base ratio is exactly 1.15708, encoding the mathematical constant their future scientists will call pi. The perimeter-to-hemp ratio precisely equals 2p to within 0.025%. Gaddath observed a team of humans using water levels and taut cords to check the angle of the rising faces. They believe these measurements honor their gods? Yes. Our cultural integration team has successfully planted the concept that mathematical precision pleases the deities. They incorporate our required measurements, believing they ensure spiritual harmony. They proceeded to the eastern face of the Great Pyramid, where complex ramp systems allowed for the movement of stones to ever-increasing heights. The ramp design is particularly ingenious, McGrath observed. Initially, we expected a simple external inclined plane, but the humans developed this spiral internal ramp system that grows with the structure itself. It's more efficient and allows for simultaneous work on multiple levels. Gaddath studied the construction technique with approval. Massive limestone blocks were being levered into position using principles of mechanical advantage. Teams of workers used wooden beams as simple machines, achieving leverage ratios that multiplied their effective force output. The block placement tolerance is exceptional, Gaddath, McGrath noted. Adjacent blocks fit with gaps averaging less than 0.5 millimeters. They've developed a technique for fine grinding the contact surfaces to create nearly perfect seams. Gadath watched as workers prepared a massive block, grinding its surfaces against a prepared stone bed using sand as an abrasive medium. They achieved this precision using only manual process. Correct. No mechanical assistance beyond simple levers and abrasives. The precision results from extraordinary patience and iterative improvement. They discard blocks that fail to meet specifications, a quality control concept they implemented themselves. This was precisely the kind of adaptability the Atan required. Humans could solve complex problems with minimal resources, a trait that would make them formidable against the Kreth, who relied heavily on technological advantages rather than innovation under constraint. "Take me inside," Gadath commanded. They proceeded to a concealed entrance at the base of the nearly completed first pyramid. Inside, the primitive stone exterior gave way to carefully disguised Atan technology. Chambers that appeared to human eyes as simple tombs housed complex genetic laboratories and neural mapping stations. The true marvel was the seamless integration. Advanced technology hidden within seemingly primitive construction. "The Grand Gallery is nearly complete," Makrath reported as they moved through the internal chambers. "The humans believe it serves ritualistic purposes, but the precise angles and dimensions create the quantum resonance field necessary for our deep scanning equipment." The massive corbelled vault rose nearly 8.6 meters high, its walls comprising 7 overlapping courses of precisely cut limestone. The acoustic properties of the space were no accident. They formed part of the sensory ecosystem required for the Atan research equipment. "Most impressive is the King's Chamber," Makrath continued as they entered a large rectangular room constructed entirely of massive granite blocks. The humans transported these granite slabs from quarries 800 kilometers distant. Each weighs approximately 50 tons, yet they're placed with millimeter precision. Gadath ran a sensor over the walls, confirming the readings. The granite contains high concentrations of quartz crystal, exactly as required for our scanning equipment. Yes. We directed them to specific quarries without explaining why this particular stone was necessary. They believe the red granite holds special religious significance. Above them, the ceiling comprised enormous granite beams weighing up to 80 tons each. The stress distribution system? A remarkable achievement, Makrath acknowledged. The weight of the entire structure above is channeled away from this chamber through a series of relieving chambers. He gestured upward. 5 separate void spaces, each with massive granite supports, distribute the weight to the outer structure. The humans implemented this complex architectural solution based only on our requirement that this chamber remain stable for eternity. And they have no understanding of the equipment this room will house? None. They believe they're building a sarcophagus chamber for their pharaoh. The granite coffer they've installed, Makrath gestured to the massive stone box in the center of the room, is precisely cut to our specifications, though they believe it will hold a royal mummy. Gadath inspected the coffer. Cut from a single block of granite, its interior dimensions were exact to within 0.2 millimeters of the specifications for the primary genetic sequencing equipment. How did they achieve this precision in cutting and hollowing solid granite? Tube drills and saws with copper-enhanced cutting edges. They developed a technique using abrasive sand and constant lubrication to cut through the granite, remarkably similar to methods we use on more primitive colonial outposts. They continued through the structure, passing the so-called Queen's Chamber, which would house secondary research equipment, and numerous smaller passages designed for ventilation and access that the humans believed held religious significance. "The air shaft alignment?" Gadath inquired. "Perfect, as specified. The northern shaft aligns precisely with their pole star at culmination. The southern shaft aligns with the central star in what humans call Orion's belt. They don't realize it points directly toward our primary relay station in their night sky. Throughout the interior, Specialized limestone blocks had been placed at key junctures, stones infused with trace elements that would serve as power conduits once the facility was fully activated. "The acoustic properties have been tested?" Gadath asked as they stood in the grand gallery. In response, Maycrath produced a tone that resonated throughout the structure at exactly 116 Hz, the frequency required for optimal operation of Aton's scanning technology. "The entire structure functions as designed. When fully operational, it will allow us to process over 300 human specimens daily for deep genetic and neural assessment." They emerged onto an external platform overlooking the construction site once more. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the desert. Thousands of humans continued their work, unaware of the true purpose behind their monumental labor. "Begin preparation for Phase 2 testing," Gadath commanded. "Select the most promising specimens from the construction teams for deeper assessment. I want preliminary genetic compatibility reports within 2 lunar cycles." "It shall be done, General," Maycrath confirmed. "And the second pyramid?" Gadath looked toward the adjacent construction site where the foundation for an only slightly smaller structure was already taking shape. "Accelerate the timeline. The humans have demonstrated greater capability than anticipated. Increase complexity and precision requirements by 12%. Push the limits of their abilities. And if they fail to meet the higher standards," Gadath's exoskeleton briefly shifted to the deep blue of decisive action, "then we will know their limitations. But I suspect they will adapt. They are proving to be remarkably resourceful creatures." As darkness fell, Gadath watched the humans continue their work by torchlight. They believed they built monuments to their gods and kings, ensuring their place in some imagined afterlife. They could not comprehend that they were actually constructing sophisticated research facilities, proving grounds for their species' potential utility in a war spanning hundreds of galaxies. In the temporary Aton encampment hidden beneath the desert sands, automated systems processed the day's data. Specimen assessments, work efficiency metrics, problem-solving aptitude scores, all cataloged and transmitted via quantum entanglement to the waiting High Council light years away. The pyramids rose a bit higher each day, monuments not to human pharaohs, but to the Atan's ruthless efficiency. And with each precisely placed stone, humanity unwittingly demonstrated its value as the Imperium's newest weapon. By the 7th solar cycle of the Atan presence on Earth, the construction of the primary pyramid complex had progressed with remarkable efficiency. The main structure now rose over 70 meters above the desert floor, its gleaming white limestone casing catching the morning sun as General Gadath conducted his inspection. 2 additional pyramids were under simultaneous construction, their foundations laid with the same mathematical precision as the first. Gadath stood at the edge of the sprawling worker encampment, his disguised form casting a long shadow across the sand. His ocular implant scanned the human activity, cataloging behavioral patterns and work efficiency metrics automatically. Something was different this morning. Subtle variations in movement patterns, increased vocalization among small groups, a 6.7% decrease in work output compared to the previous 3-day average. "You've noticed it as well," Maycrath observed, approaching from the direction of the research facility hidden beneath the first pyramid. The chief scientist's adaptive camouflage had been reconfigured to display the regalia of a high priest, complete with the falcon-headed mask that the humans associated with their deity, Horus. "Behavioral anomalies throughout the western quadrant," Gadath confirmed. Better explained. "Explain." Maycrath's disguised form produced a data tablet concealed as a ceremonial papyrus. "The 3rd rebellion incident in 42 days. Last night, a group of 28 workers escaped the northern perimeter. Security drones tracked them into the desert. 16 were recaptured and returned to labor. The remainder—" His mandibles clicked beneath his disguise. "The desert proved efficient at resource conservation." Gadath processed this information dispassionately. "This pattern persists despite neural conditioning. Interesting." "Indeed." despite optimal work conditions by their primitive standards, adequate nutrition, regulated rest periods, medical intervention when efficiency requires it, they continue to exhibit resistance behaviors. Gadath began walking toward the main construction site, Mekrath falling into step beside him. The previous incidents, similar patterns. Small groups, coordinated escape attempts, typically led by individuals showing higher than avatar/other/problem-solving abilities. The first group attempted to flee by boat downriver. The second tried to infiltrate our supply transport system. Casualties? Minimal. We've implemented non-lethal containment protocols in most cases. The specimens represent a significant resource investment. As they approached the base of the Great Pyramid, a disturbance erupted among a team of workers maneuvering a massive limestone block. A human male, taller than most, with unusual physical development, suddenly shouted and swung a copper tool at the overseer. Within seconds, 7 other workers joined the resistance, wielding improvised weapons and forming a defensive formation that suggested rudimentary tactical thinking. Gadath observed, with scientific interest rather than alarm. The Atan security forces, disguised as the Pharaoh's elite guards, moved with practiced efficiency, surrounding the rebellious group and activating neural disruptors concealed as ceremonial staffs. The humans collapsed, their nervous systems temporarily overwhelmed by frequencies beyond their perception. That one, Gadath indicated the instigator as security forces began restraining the unconscious rebels. I want a full neural and genetic workup. His coordination of the others suggests leadership aptitude. Noted, he'll be processed in the central laboratory by nightfall. They continued their inspection route, moving up the precisely engineered ramp system to observe work on the upper levels of the structure. Thousands of humans labored in coordinated teams, placing multi-tone blocks with millimeter precision, unaware of the true purpose behind their monumental effort. Rebellion incidents, Gadath mused as they reached a vantage point overlooking the entire complex. They present an interesting variable in our assessment. A concerning defect, Mekrath suggested. The Imperium requires absolute compliance in combat units. Gadath's inner eyelids flicked in disagreement. Not necessarily a defect, possibly an adaptive survival trait. The capacity to resist external control could prove valuable against Kreth's psychic domination attempts. This perspective shift was characteristic of Gadath's reputation as an unconventional military strategist. Where others in the Atan command structure saw only problems, he recognized potential advantages. The Council may view it differently, Mekrath cautioned. The Council tasked me with assessing human military potential, Gadath countered. Independent resistance capacity could be an asset if properly channeled. Prepare a dedicated research protocol. I want comparative analysis between compliant specimens and those displaying resistance behaviors. They descended to ground level and proceeded toward the secondary research facility hidden beneath the smallest of the 3 pyramids under construction. Unlike the main pyramid, which housed the primary genetic and neural laboratories, this structure was dedicated to behavioral assessment and modification experiments. Inside, the primitive stone exterior gave way to the gleaming efficiency of Atan technology in the central chamber, which human workers believed would house the sarcophagus of a minor royal, contained rows of assessment pods, each holding a human specimen undergoing various simulation protocols. Show me the rebellion leaders from the previous incidents, Gadath commanded. Mekrath led him to a segregated section where 12 humans were suspended in translucent containment fields. Unlike the standard test subjects, who experienced simulated environments designed to assess general combat potential, these specimens were subjected to targeted neural resistance protocols. Subject designation Alpha 73. Mekrath indicated a particularly muscular male, leader of the first rebellion attempt, 27 standard units old, displays exceptional coordination abilities and above-average tactical improvisation. Gadeth studied the neural activity displays floating beside the containment field. Resistance to standard conditioning protocols? Significant. Conventional compliance programming achieves only 62% effectiveness compared to baseline specimens. However, McGrath manipulated the data display, bringing up comparative combat simulation results. When facing simulated Kreth infiltration attempts, he demonstrates 47% greater resistance to psychic subversion. This confirmed Gadoth's theory. The very trait that made these humans troublesome as laborers could make them invaluable as frontline troops against the Kreth, whose primary advantage in countless battles had been their ability to psychically compromise enemy forces. And the female specimen? Gadeth indicated the adjacent containment field, where a human female with unusual scarification patterns displayed remarkably similar neural resistance patterns. Alpha 86 led the Second Rebellion, notable for her ability to maintain group cohesion under stress. 17 other workers followed her escape plan, despite minimal preparation time. Her neural architecture shows unusual development in the prefrontal regions associated with planning and social coordination. Gadeth studied the comparative metrics with growing interest. Cross-compare all rebellion leaders. I want to identify common neural and genetic markers for this resistance trait. Already underway, General. Preliminary findings suggest a heritable component. We've identified specific allele combinations present in 83% of rebellion participants. This was potentially significant. If the resistance trait could be isolated and enhanced through targeted genetic modification, it would create a soldier caste specifically optimized against Kreth psychic warfare tactics. Expand the assessment protocol, Gadeth ordered. I want controlled rebellion scenarios introduced in quadrants 3 and 7. Provide subtle opportunities for resistance. Then identify and isolate the natural leaders who emerge. McGrath's mandibles clicked in the pattern indicating concern. Deliberately encouraging resistance behaviors may compromise construction efficiency. A necessary trade-off. The construction project is merely the preliminary assessment phase. Our primary objective is to evaluate military potential. Gadeth's exoskeleton shifted hues slightly as he considered the implications. The Imperium doesn't need builders. It needs warriors who can resist Kreth's subversion. They proceeded deeper into the facility, passing through security barriers disguised as ceremonial gates. In the deepest chamber, 20 specialized containment pods housed the most promising specimens identified thus far. Our elite candidates, McGrath explained, selected from over 40,000 workers based on optimal combinations of physical capability, neural adaptability, and genetic compatibility with our enhancement protocols. Gadeth approached the central pod, where the human who had led the first major rebellion underwent intensive neural mapping. Despite being subjected to what would be excruciating procedures for a conscious subject, the suspended human's vital signs remained remarkably stable, another indicator of the species' resilience. Begin preparation for the first genetic modification trial, Gadeth commanded. Use the rebellion leaders as the primary test group. I want to see if we can enhance the resistance trait while maintaining general compliance to Atan command structures. A delicate balance to achieve, McGrath noted. But potentially the key breakthrough we need, Gadeth countered. A warrior who cannot be psychically compromised by the Kreth, yet follows Atan battle directives, would provide a significant tactical advantage. They returned to the surface, emerging through a concealed entrance designed to appear as a minor offering chamber to human observers. The afternoon sun cast harsh light across the construction complex, where work continued uninterrupted despite the morning's rebellion incident. At the base of the Great Pyramid, a public demonstration was underway, a calculated response to the rebellion that Gadeth had authorized as part of standard containment protocol. The leaders of the morning's resistance were bound to wooden posts, facing punishment that the human workforce would perceive as severe but survivable. In reality, the punishment incorporated sophisticated neural mapping procedures disguised as traditional torture methods. An effective deterrent? Gaddath inquired as they observed from a distance. Partially effective, McGrath replied. Statistical analysis shows a temporary 23% decrease in resistance behaviors following public discipline demonstrations. However, the effect diminishes over time, and in approximately 7% of the workforce, witnessing punishment appears to strengthen resistance tendencies rather than suppress them. Another interesting anomaly, Gaddath noted. These humans demonstrate variable response patterns that defy simple behavioral conditioning. The Kreth will find them challenging to predict and control. As they continued their inspection circuit, they passed a section of the worker encampment where off-duty laborers engaged in various social behaviors. Some crafted simple artifacts from available materials, crude representations of their gods, tools or aspects of their environment. Others engaged in ritualistic movement patterns that anthropologists had identified as religious or recreational activities. Despite the harsh conditions and forced labor, they continued to create, McGrath observed. An unexpected persistence of cultural expression. Gaddath watched as a group of workers, their bodies bearing the scars of years of punishing labor, nonetheless found energy to perform a rhythmic dance as others produced percussive sounds using improvised instruments. Document these behaviors, Gaddath commanded. Bimoyumita demonstrate psychological resilience beyond our initial projections. Near the edge of the encampment, they observed another small gathering, this one more secretive. Workers huddled in whispered conversation, occasionally casting wary glances toward the Atan overseers disguised as Egyptian nobles and priests. Gaddath's enhanced auditory systems captured fragments of their communication. Another rebellion in planning, he noted dispassionately. Shall we intervene? Mikrat inquired. Not yet. Let it develop naturally. I want to observe their organizational methodology. Gaddath activated his neural link to the security network, tagging the participants for enhanced surveillance. This recurring pattern of resistance despite certain failure indicates a psychological trait worth investigating further. The persistent rebellions represented a fascinating paradox from the Atan perspective. Individually, humans were physically weak compared to many species the Imperium had encountered. Their technological development was primitive, their lifespan brief, their sensory capabilities limited. Yet they displayed remarkable tenacity, continuing to resist even when resistance was demonstrably futile. It's not a rational behavior pattern, McGrath observed, as they watched the clandestine meeting. They cannot succeed. Our technological superiority ensures their capture or elimination, yet they persist. Precisely what makes them valuable, Gaddath replied. The Kreth strategy relies on rational surrender when resistance appears futile. A species that continues fighting against overwhelming odds disrupts their entire tactical doctrine. As the sun began to set, they returned to the command center, hidden beneath the desert floor 2 kilometers from the pyramid complex. Inside the gleaming facility that no human would ever see, Atan personnel monitored every aspect of the operation, from construction progress to individual human biometrics. Compile a comprehensive report on all rebellion incidents to date, Gaddath instructed the Intelligence Division commander. I want detailed psychological profiles of all leaders, genetic sequencing, neural mapping, and behavioral predictors, cross-receptors with combat simulation performance. By your command, General, the officer acknowledged. Later, in the privacy of his personal quarters, Gaddath reviewed the day's data and prepared his report to the High Council. The holographic display showed construction progress, research milestones, and security incidents in parallel stream. Computer, begin transmission to High Council, he commanded. The quantum entanglement communicator activated, creating a secure channel across vast interstellar distances. Esteemed elders of the High Council, Gaddath began, his voice assuming the formal cadences of official reporting. Phase 1 of the Earth assessment operation proceeds with 94% efficiency. Construction of the primary research facilities is on schedule, with human labor performance exceeding initial projections by 12%. He paused, considering how to frame the rebellion data. The Council was primarily concerned with results, not methodological details, but the persistent resistance behavior represented a potentially significant finding. "We have identified an interesting feature in human psychology that warrants special attention," he continued. Despite optimal control protocols, approximately 3% of specimens display persistent resistance behaviors, including coordinated escape attempts and direct opposition to authority figures. He transmitted the compiled data on the rebellion incidents, including neural scans of the leaders and genetic sequencing that suggested heritable components to the resistance trait. While this might initially appear as a defect in the species, our comparative analysis suggests it may represent a significant tactical advantage against Kreth's psychic warfare strategies. Humans who demonstrate strong resistance to ATAN control protocols also show markedly enhanced resilience against simulated Kreth subversion techniques. Gaddath's exoskeleton shifted to the deep bronze that indicated confident assessment. "I recommend expanding our research to isolate and enhance this resistance trait while maintaining general compliance to hierarchical command structures. Preliminary genetic modification protocols have been developed and await your authorization to proceed." He included McCrath's detailed research proposal showing how targeted modification could potentially create a soldier caste specifically optimized to resist Kreth's psychic infiltration while following ATAN tactical directives. These rebellions, while a minor operational inconvenience, have provided valuable insight into human psychological resilience. Far from being a disqualifying factor, I believe this trait represents one of the most promising aspects of human military potential. The Kreth have never encountered a species that continues resistance despite overwhelming odds. This psychological anomaly could prove decisive in upcoming campaigns. The Council's response was swift and decisive. Permission to proceed with genetic modification trials was granted, along with authorization to accelerate the overall assessment timeline. The recent Kreth advances in the Cygnus arm had increased the urgency of developing new combat resources. As Gaddath deactivated the quantum communicator, he gazed through the viewing portal at the pyramid silhouettes visible against the night sky. The great structures rose from the desert like massive sentinels, their true purpose hidden from the creatures who built them with such remarkable precision. Tomorrow, a new phase would begin, selecting the most promising specimens for the first round of genetic enhancement. The rebellious ones, ironically, would be the first to undergo the procedures that would transform them into the vanguard of the ATAN counteroffensive against the Kreth. The humans continued their small, futile rebellions, unaware that this very trait was what made them valuable. Their persistent resistance, which they believed represented freedom, was precisely what would make them such effective weapons in a war beyond their comprehension. 12 solar cycles after the commencement of the Earth operation, General Gaddath stood atop the completed Great Pyramid, surveying the vast complex that sprawled across the desert plateau. All three primary structures now stood in perfect geometric harmony. Massive monuments of precision engineering that would baffle future human generations for millennia to come. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert floor, the angled light accentuating the perfect symmetry of the structures. The gleaming white limestone casing stones reflected the sunlight with such intensity that the pyramids would be visible from orbit, a beacon of mathematical precision on an otherwise primitive world. "Magnificent, are they not?" McCrath observed, joining Gaddath at the apex of the 146.7-meter structure. "Even by ATAN standards, the precision is remarkable." Gaddath's exoskeleton shifted to the deep copper hue that indicated satisfaction with a completed military objective. "And all the more impressive given the primitive tools and biological limitations of the workforce." Below them, the sprawling worker encampment bustled with activity. Nearly 100,000 humans had participated in the construction over the past 12 cycles. They had quarried, transported, carved, and placed over 6 million tons of stone, with a level of precision that would not be matched on Earth for thousands of years. The final assessment metrics have been compiled, Clarke reported, producing a data tablet disguised as a ceremonial artifact. Human performance has exceeded projections in 83% of tested parameters. Dakota absorbed the data through his neural interface. The statistics confirmed what he had already concluded. Despite their primitive technology and biological limitations, humans possessed exceptional potential as adaptable combat units. Most notable is their problem-solving capacity under constraint, Clarke continued. When faced with seemingly impossible engineering challenges, they developed solutions using only the materials and concepts available to them. The spiral internal ramp system alone represents an innovation our engineers had not considered in the original design specifications. Dakota nodded. And the genetic modification trials? Extremely promising. The third-generation modifications have achieved 94% resistance to simulated Clarke psychic intrusion, while maintaining 87% compliance with Atan command protocols. This was the true triumph of their research, far more significant than the massive stone structures that house their laboratories. Through careful genetic engineering, they had enhanced the natural human resistance to external control, while adding specific neural receptivity to Atan command frequencies. And the production facilities are prepared for full-scale implementation? Yes, General. The deep chambers beneath all three pyramids have been converted from research to production configuration. We can process approximately 12,000 specimens per lunar cycle for genetic enhancement and neural reprogramming. Dakota activated his long-range optical enhancement, scanning the distant horizon where the Nile River curved through the fertile valley. Beyond the river lay numerous human settlements, population centers that had grown and prospered under Atan management. The humans believed they served their pharaoh, building monuments to ensure his immortality. The truth was far more pragmatic. The Atan had systematically increased the local population to ensure an adequate supply of genetic material for their military program. Begin final preparations for the primary extraction phase, Dakota commanded. Activation sequence for all harvesting units begins at sunset. By your command, General, Clarke acknowledged with the formal gesture of his upper limbs. The transport fleet has entered the system and will achieve low-orbit synchronization at the designated hour. They descended from the pyramid's apex via a concealed gravity lift, disguised as a ceremonial staircase. Humans observed their passage with reverent awe, prostrating themselves before what they perceived as divine representatives of their gods. Inside the pyramid, the primitive stone corridors gave way to the sleek efficiency of Atan technology once the concealed doors sealed behind them. The massive structure, which humans believed contained only a few simple chambers and passages, actually housed an intricate complex of laboratories, production facilities, and data processing centers. The Council is particularly interested in the Rebellion Enhancement Protocol, Clarke noted as they moved through the central processing hub where thousands of genetic samples were being prepared for the coming mass production phase. Your insight regarding the value of resistance traits has proven prescient. Indeed, what had initially appeared as a troublesome human defect, their persistent tendency toward rebellion despite overwhelming power disparities, had become the centerpiece of the Atan Enhancement Protocol. By isolating and amplifying the genetic and neural patterns found in rebellion leaders, they had created soldiers with unprecedented resistance to Clarke's psychic warfare tactics. The simulation results are conclusive, Dakota stated. In 17,000 combat scenarios, enhanced human units maintained tactical cohesion against Clarke's psychic subversion at rates 312% higher than our most resilient Atan warriors. They proceeded to the primary command center hidden deep beneath the pyramid's base. Here, ATAN officers monitored every aspect of the operation, from the continuing construction of secondary structures to the genetic processing of selected human specimens. Status of the neural mapping database, Gaddath inquired of the Chief Information Officer. Complete, General. We've cataloged neural patterns from 94,362 distinct human specimens, with comprehensive mapping of cognitive processes, emotional responses, and behavioral tendencies. The variation spectrum has been fully documented and categorized according to military application potential. This vast database represented one of the operation's most valuable outcomes beyond the immediate military application of human soldiers. The comprehensive understanding of human neural architecture would inform ATAN genetic research for generations to come. And the beacon network? Fully operational. All three primary structures are now synchronized with the orbital relay. The quantum entanglement network can be activated with a single command code. This was the aspect of the pyramid complex that would remain most deeply hidden from future human discovery. Beneath the massive stone structures, a network of exotic materials created a planet-wide monitoring system that would allow the ATAN to track human evolutionary developments long after their departure. The structures themselves, with their precise mathematical alignments and strategic positioning, formed a planetary-scale detection grid that would alert the Imperium to any significant technological developments or extraterrestrial contact. The time has come, Gaddath announced to his assembled command staff. Initiate the primary extraction protocol. Throughout the command center, ATAN officers activated their stations, initiating the carefully planned sequence that would culminate in the largest off-world transport of biological specimens in Imperial history. As night fell across the Egyptian desert, subtle changes began occurring throughout the region. In the worker encampment surrounding the pyramids, thousands of humans fell into a deep, synchronized sleep. As airborne compounds were released from concealed vents, in villages and settlements along the Nile, the same process was repeated with methodical precision. High above Earth's atmosphere, massive transport ships moved into position, their advanced propulsion systems and cloaking technology rendering them completely undetectable to human perception. In the command center, Gaddath watched as the extraction metrics began registering on the holographic displays. Green indicators spread across the regional map as collection teams moved through settlements, identifying and securing the specimens selected through years of careful assessment. Primary extraction proceeding at 107% of projected efficiency, the operations officer reported. No significant resistance encountered. Of course not. The ATAN had planned this moment with characteristic thoroughness. The sleeping humans were being systematically collected according to a detailed selection protocol that prioritized optimal genetic profiles, physical capabilities, and neural patterns identified as beneficial for military applications. Special focus on the rebellion-prone phenotypes, Gaddath reminded the collection cohort. Throughout the night, the collection process continued with mechanical efficiency. Specialized transport craft moved between the surface and the orbiting fleet, transferring thousands of unconscious humans to cryogenic processing chambers, where they would remain suspended until reaching the primary modification facilities in the ATAN home system. By dawn, the operation was complete. 3 million humans, approximately 7% of Earth's total population at that time, had been extracted for transportation to ATAN space. The selection had been carefully managed to minimize disruption to regional population dynamics while maximizing genetic diversity within the extracted specimens. In the primary pyramid complex, Gaddath prepared for his final report to the High Council before departure. The quantum entanglement communicator created the familiar holographic chamber where the 7 elders awaited his assessment. "Honored elders," Gaddath began, "I am pleased to report the successful completion of the Earth assessment operation. Primary extraction has been completed according to protocol, with 3.2 million specimens secured for military conversion." The first elder's exoskeleton shifted to the pale gold that indicated satisfaction. Your efficiency honors the Imperium, General Gaddath. The preliminary reports on the genetic modification protocols are most promising. Indeed, revered Elder, the human resistance trait has proven exceptionally valuable. Through targeted enhancement, we've created a soldier template with unprecedented resilience against Kreth psychic warfare tactics. And the planetary monitoring network? Inquired the third Elder. Fully operational. The primary structures have been calibrated to maintain surveillance functionality for approximately 12,000 local years. Should human technological development reach a level of interest to the Imperium, or should any extraterrestrial contact occur, the beacon system will automatically alert our monitoring stations. What of the remaining human population? Asked the second Elder. They will awaken with no memory of the extraction process, Gaddath explained. We've implemented targeted memory modification across the regional population. They will perceive the missing individuals as victims of a great plague that swept through the area upon completion of the sacred monuments. A convenient narrative, observed the fourth Elder with the mandible click that indicated approval of efficient deception. Additionally, Gaddath continued, we've installed a small permanent research team disguised as a religious order. They will continue monitoring human development and collecting genetic samples for the next 300 cycles before withdrawing. The first Elder's compound eyes glistened with the subtle bioluminescence that signified formal approval. The High Council commends you, General Gaddath. This operation represents one of the most successful species assessments in Imperial history. Thank you, revered Elder. The transport fleet has begun its departure sequence. I will personally oversee the initial modification procedures during the return journey. The communication ended, and Gaddath turned to Mekroth, who had been monitoring the extraction metrics throughout the night. Final assessment? Gaddath inquired. Beyond all projections, General, Mekroth replied with genuine enthusiasm. A rare emotional display for an Atan scientist. The human specimens show remarkable adaptability to our initial modification protocols. Preliminary testing indicates a 94% survival rate through the enhancement process, far higher than any previous non-Atan species. And the warrior potential? Exceptional. The enhanced rebellion trait, when properly channeled through our command protocols, creates precisely the combination we sought. Resistance to external psychic influence combined with structured adherence to Atan battle doctrine. Their physical limitations can be overcome through targeted genetic enhancement and cybernetic augmentation. Gaddath moved to the viewing portal that overlooked the now quiet pyramid complex. The massive structures gleamed in the morning sun, their perfect geometric forms casting precise shadows across the desert floor. They built monuments thinking they ensured immortality for their rulers, Gaddath observed. Instead, they demonstrated their species' value as weapons in a war they cannot comprehend. An efficient deception, Mekroth agreed. The remaining population will continue the narrative for millennia. Future generations will debate how primitive humans achieved such engineering precision, creating myths and legends around these structures. And none will guess their true purpose. Gaddath's inner eyelids flicked with the subtle gesture that indicated appreciation of strategic elegance. The structures themselves will ensure the Atan legacy on this world long after our departure. Indeed, the pyramids would stand as Earth's most enduring monuments, not to human pharaohs, but to Atan pragmatism. Their precise measurements, astronomical alignments, and architectural innovations would baffle human archaeologists for thousands of years. Theories would abound. From ingenious ramps to levitation, from massive slave labor to extraterrestrial intervention, ironically, only the most ridiculed theory would approach the truth. As the Egyptian sun climbed higher in the sky, the human population began awakening from their induced sleep. They would find thousands of their fellows missing, vanished in what their leaders would describe as a divine judgment following the completion of the sacred monuments. The narrative would spread, becoming legend, then myth, then religion. Meanwhile, high above Earth's atmosphere, the Atan transport fleet began its journey back to Imperial space. In vast cryogenic chambers, 3 million humans lay suspended in artificial hibernation, awaiting the procedures that would transform them into living weapons against the Kreth. General Gaddath stood on the command deck of the flagship Imperious Vanguard, watching as the blue-green world receded in the viewing portal. The planet had yielded precisely what the Imperium required, a new weapon in their ancient war. The humans' remarkable combination of adaptability, resilience, and that peculiar tendency toward continued resistance even against overwhelming odds made them uniquely valuable in the fight against an enemy that relied on psychological dominance. "Set course for the Cygnus front," Gaddath commanded. "Calculate optimal route to intercept the Kreth advance fleet." The Atan crew acknowledged with perfect discipline, plotting the journey that would deliver their newly acquired biological weapons to the front lines of a war spanning hundreds of galaxies. Behind them, the pyramids of Giza stood in silent testimony to the brief Atan presence on Earth. Perfect geometric forms housing technology beyond human comprehension, their true purpose hidden beneath myths of pharaohs and gods. The humans had built the pyramids, but not for the reasons they believed. They had participated in their own assessment and selection, demonstrating the very traits that made them valuable to the Atan war machine. And now, as the Atan fleet accelerated beyond Earth's solar system, millions of those humans traveled toward a destiny they could never have imagined, becoming the front line in an interstellar conflict that had raged since before their species learned to create fire. The pyramids remained behind, monuments not to human achievement, but to Atan efficiency. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.